God works in different ways, and He uses different people. Just because somebody doesn't have a PhD does not mean the Lord cannot work with those types of people. We go back in the Bible, we look at David, a shepherd. Okay, Samuel went down the line of all of Jesse's sons, and he thought for sure someone in this group had to be the anointed, the next king of Israel. But no, God didn't take the most handsome or the oldest son. He took the youngest, the shepherd that wasn't even present. So that's an example of how God works. Moses, a Hebrew baby that was destined to be killed.
He couldn't speak well.
Couldn't speak well. He was, and God took him. He was out in the wilderness for 40 years to unlearn a lot of the things that he had learned in Egypt as possibly the prince of Egypt. And so God can, and Moses said, "I cannot speak. I can't do that." And God used him in a marvelous way, and used his brother to help him speak. So God uses unlikely characters at times.
Is there one thing that stands out about Ron's character that you remember the most? If someone asks, who is Ron, what is he like since he's gone now, what would you tell that person who never met Ron? What?
In my perspective, what made Ron different than anyone else that I had never met before, Ron was trustworthy. You always knew where you stood with Ron. He stayed the same. He had a strong faith. Ron was a humble man. I'd never ever heard him once brag or try to draw attention to himself, and that's unusual in the day and age we live in. You take somebody else that may have found all these different things. It's easy for us as human beings to become elevated. Wow, look at me. But Ron was extremely humble, and Ron had a deep love for his Savior. He had a deep love. Whenever he mentioned Jesus, it almost brought tears to his eyes. And his number one mission, his goal, was to share the precious gift of salvation, what Christ did on the cross for us, to others. He was relentless in his pursuit of spreading the truth. No matter how much ridicule he took, he continued on. Even when he was sick, he continued on. Weekend after weekend, he would go and present these things all around the world. And Ron never became rich from this. Ron worked when he was at home to try to fund these expeditions that he'd go on. Ron never made any money off of this. And he definitely didn't gain a lot of recognition. Most of it's been a lot of ridicule. But his reward is in heaven. Another thing about Ron was extremely generous. Ron was extremely generous, and he had his mind on others before himself. He did things sometimes that I would question. Wow, he's sure generous. I'm not sure if I would have taken the certain stances he had taken at times. But even up to his death, I saw him about a few months before he passed away, and spent a week with him out at his place, and he never changed. He was at peace, even though he was in severe pain and he was sick. And his goals, his motives were still the same: to spread the work and to save as many souls as possible. And that was his motive. So he was definitely unlike anybody else I'd ever met before.
What do you think?
That's good. No, you can do it.